Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Family Treehouse, a podcast series brought to you by Storied, where I chat with people that have a passion for genealogy, storytelling, or both. I'm your host, Heather Haunert, and today I am super excited to get to chat with our guest, Jessica Taylor, the CEO of Legacy Tree Genealogists, a genealogy research firm that performs custom genealogy work and DNA analysis for their clients. Legacy Tree, like I am blown away with this. Legacy Tree is celebrating its 20th year this year. That's so amazing to me. And they have a team of in-house researchers and on-site genealogists in over 100 countries. That is amazing. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's fun to talk with you.
Super excited to have you. So why don't you start, Jessica, by telling us a little bit about your background? So how did you get started in the field of family history in general and genealogy?
Sure. So I think that my story, from what I hear of other people's story, is kind of typical. I had a grandma who loved genealogy. She loved to talk to me about her ancestors. She had many books on her shelves about her family history. And so that was, I'm sure, a big part of it. I also had a dad who, when I was a teenager, got into genealogy, and that was part of it. And then I just happened to be at a university that had a family history bachelor's degree, and I found that and just fell in love with the idea that I could do history and I could write because I liked to write, and I could sleuth and discover clues, and I could do this for other people, and it was a very good fit for me.
I need to like make a tally because I think it's those infamous grandmas are the ones that get everybody
Mhm.
started
I
um,
know.
in,
Yeah.
in that field. Tell us how, I'm just curious, kind of tell us a little bit about Legacy Tree. How did you get that started?
So I worked at the Family Search Library as just a library attendant. This was when I was, 18 through 20 something. And that job was like a library assistant, so I would sit and I would read the book call numbers and make sure that they were in the right order and help the patrons with their printing needs and little things like that. But what that did is it helped me to know a lot of people at the library, both people who worked there as consultants and people who worked there or who used the library as professional genealogists. And so I was there, I was getting my degree in family history, and then I did an internship there at the library as part of that degree. And just through that whole process, came to know a lot of really great people. And at this time, so this was, I started Legacy Tree in 2004. And, you will remember the web was pretty new still.
Yeah.
Google search was new and it was not, the main player at the time. Um, so I was intrigued by web design. I thought, well, let's just try, making a website, and let's gather some of my friends and colleagues here at the library and put together a group and say, hey, we can do professional genealogy and advertise online. And, I started advertising with Google, and that was new. It cost about 5 cents a click for like the family tree keyword at the
Yeah.
time. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just a good new time for a lot of that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how Legacy Tree began. I wore nearly all of the hats in the company, and just kind of represented the company as the salesperson and the editor, and a lot of the different pieces, and then learned a lot along the way, got some training, and as we have grown, I've been able to give away many hats to much more capable people for roles like marketing and things like that. So it has been a really fun journey.
Yeah, it's just that it's incredible to me that you guys are 20 years old. It's awesome, and how much you have grown. It's just incredible. Jessica, tell us why you think storytelling is such an important part of family history.
I mean, so truthfully, I think everything is a story. I mean, you can any fact, any piece of information is part of a story, right? So, it's importance in family history is, I mean, that is family history, that is everything that we dig up, everything that we discover is a piece of somebody's story, right? And one of the things that I love about family history is that you get these glimpses of their story, right? And there's something so beautiful about that. Sorry, I didn't
Yes.
think I would get teary about this,
No,
but
I right there with you.
but you pull up a record and you see one very small snapshot of somebody's entire life.
Yeah.
Sorry, wow. And it's just so beautiful to take the time to see that, to take that peek into their story, Uh, why it's important in family history, I think, is that's where the inspiration is, and
Yeah.
that's where the interest lies. And, as we try to inspire the next generation of people to care about where they came from, those are the things that draw them in,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And I think I look back at when I was younger and heard some of the stories of my own ancestors, and yeah, that's what's inspiring. That's what you say, oh, I want to be a part of that. That's neat. That I'm part of that person,
Yeah.
And that's what gets people interested.
Well, I think and this was a later question I had, but I think it kind of really fits in right here. I think that using those, like you said, everything that we come across, all of these historical records, they do help tell the story. How do you, because I'm thinking how I use it, I use them all the time, just pulling those snippets. How do you use a historical record to pull out something for a story?
Well, I mean, that's part of the fun of it is
Yeah.
gathering all of those different pieces, right? And saying, okay, so this person was in this place at this time doing this, and then they were over here. And here's how we know that they're the same person in these two different records. And here's the historical context between like why they would have even gone over there, right?
Yeah.
And putting all those pieces together does create this really fun timeline of who they were and what they did, I mean, for me personally, when I'm writing a story, I'm working right now on writing my own story. And I think that the most important thing, honestly, is just, and you'll hear, I mean, this is nothing new, but just to do it,
Yes. Yeah.
because it is overwhelming to think I'm going to put words on a paper and I want them to be perfect and I want everything to be right, but when you just start doing it, words get put on the paper and they're honestly pretty good.
Yes.
And you can obviously do another draft. And now we have AI who can even clean it up even
Yeah.
more for us, right? But we have to, do the initial work of
Yeah.
getting the thoughts out of our heads. So stories can be written in bite-sized pieces. Um, and just what I personally, I have a weekly reminder that comes up
Oh, I
in my
love that.
to-do list. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I believe it's Tuesday right now,
Hmm.
I get a reminder, and I honestly only spend about 15 minutes
Yeah.
writing. I just have like some story prompts, and I'll just answer one prompt, and little by little, my life story will be written. And someday I'll probably feed that to AI and say, make this actually a cohesive story with all of my answers, and that will be better
Yeah.
than nothing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
I think a couple of things that you touched on that I think are good. First of all, writing your story. I think so many people get caught up on wanting to tell the stories of their ancestors as best they can, and yet we need to tell our stories because in 5 years they are history, and so having those captured, I think that was a good one. And then just not worrying about it and just getting it down. I love the idea of the reminder. I think unless somebody is extremely disciplined, that and no matter how much you like it, you're not going to do it if you don't have some kind of reminder to set to do that every week. So I love that. That was a great tip. Great tip. How do you go about writing a story? Like, do you have, is there kind of a model or style that you follow, or you just kind of wing it when you tell, like, something comes to your mind and you just kind of wing the story? How do you do that process?
I mean, at Legacy Tree, we have a very specific, way that we report on our
Mhm.
research, and there are stories in that.
Right.
But we're following like the genealogical proof standard, right?
Right.
So we're
Right.
we're we're drawing conclusions based on evidence, and so
Right.
that's a little bit of a different like path than just a here's what I remember about my
Yeah.
grandma kind of story, right? So it depends on what your goal is and why you're writing that story.
Yeah.
So uh yeah, as far as a framework for stories, I think that
Yeah.
there's lots of advice out there on how to make a story interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I think as we get more and more writing tools through AI, like we will be able to feed what we've written and say,
Yeah.
make this more interesting. And I think that it will do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
So that's going to be really interesting as we like partner with
Yeah.
that tool.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I think that is one thing that people it just is hard for them to get started. So I know with Story, we do have Story Assist, which is AI. Just putting in a couple of details, and it's just so much easier for them once they have something that they can look at, to kind of respond to, almost like a rough draft. I think that just helps people. Yeah, there's lots of tools out there. Um, do you recommend any resources or tools if somebody is kind of looking to get started? Thinking of those beginner people, and this could be story related, genealogy related, family history. What do you suggest for people that are just kind of getting started, tools or resources?
Yeah. Um, I think number one, that's super exciting for you. And I'm very happy for people who get curious and want to get started. So, first of all, I think that I would say, as imperfect as it is, just get on a family history site, see if anybody has uploaded a family tree that you can tie into or records that you can tie into, because that's a really good start. And, um, after that, there are easy records and there are hard records. And, the more recent the ancestors are that you're looking for, the easier the records will be, most likely, depending on where they lived.
Yeah.
And a lot of those will be indexed online. And so that's just a fun, just looking in the US Census and finding somebody in 1950. I mean, that's just really fun.
Yeah.
And, you know, from there, I mean, I guess I can shamelessly say there is help out there. There's
Yes.
professional help out there. We have a lot of clients who start on their own and find what they can find, and that's really fun for them. And then, their ancestor came from Poland or
Yeah.
somewhere.
Right.
And it's good to know that there is professional help if you need
Yes.
it, and
Yeah.
that's okay too. We
Yeah.
get professional help for like everything in our lives, and there's nothing wrong with
Absolutely.
getting that help if you're stuck, because then you get unstuck and then you can see what you can do from there. But that's fine. um yeah, I think that's my advice.
And I'm glad that you said that, because I think there are a lot of people I know that contact us through Storied and say, hey, what kind of help can you provide? Do you have recommendations for anybody? So, having those outlets for like Legacy Tree is excellent for people. Do you find sometimes too, Jessica, that they kind of get started and then just get overwhelmed? Like it's so much, for them.
Yeah, I mean, as it's fun and some people love it as a hobby and have the time to do that, but it really can take a lot of time.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
for some people it just makes sense,
Yeah.
just like you might hire a cleaning person,
Right.
it just makes sense to have somebody else take that time, and then you get the stories, you get the documents,
Right.
everything is just given to you, and you get to enjoy that and share that with your family. So it really just depends on, what somebody wants,
Yeah.
how they want to spend their time,
Yeah. Well, my favorite part is always asking our guest, what is a, favorite story that you have in your family that you like to share with people?
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of stories, but what comes to mind is my most recent just exploration in my own family history.
Mhm.
I have a line that is from Georgia, which is kind of unique for my family
Yeah.
tree because everybody else was in New England very, very early,
Yeah.
or they were in England or Sweden and then just came straight out to the West. And so it's kind of fun to actually have some Southern ancestors and
Yeah.
challenging.
Yes.
So yeah, I was reading, and this, goes back to the stories. I have relatives who have put stories up online and they're not written perfectly,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the information is there, and I really appreciate, that there's a story. So this family has a story of the dad's participation in the Civil War. And he actually wrote this letter to his 12-year-old son before he was killed in a battle. And we have the letter, and it's so
Oh,
sweet and so sad. And it just like makes me cry. But, that's family
oh,
history. That's like, oh, I just like appreciate this little family and, the challenges that they had. So super
that is
sweet.
incredible that you have that oh my goodness. That gives me
Yeah.
goosebumps. That's incredible. Wow. So how
Yeah.
did you
Very
come up
sweet.
with, who had the letter? How did you come up with it?
Yeah, I know. Good question, right? And I didn't do that research. I haven't
Yeah.
spent a lot of time like tracking down the originals.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that letter survived, but I'm glad that it has survived. Yeah.
Yes, that's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, we're in Georgia since that's where I am. Do you know where?
Oh, goodness. I'd have to look it up. I mean, I could take a minute and tell
I
you
mean, you don't
if
have
you
to.
want to.
No,
Yeah.
I was just curious because that's so fun. And it's so fun being in the South because the not originally from here, but the amount of history in the area is just incredible.
Right.
With
Yeah.
things like Civil War. So
I'll be distractedly talking while I
yeah.
look up the
All good.
location.
Well, to kind of finish up,
Gwinnett,
you find it?
DeKalb, Georgia.
Oh, I don't know where that is. I'll have to look it
Yeah,
up.
I haven't been in Georgia for
Yeah,
like 20, 30 years. So
yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
anyway,
Great. That's
yeah.
a great story to have. So to finish up here, Jessica, what would you say? Do you have a tip or a trick or piece of advice or wisdom that you could leave with our audience about anything, genealogy, family history, storytelling?
Ooh, um, I mean, looking back over my experience, I think, and I don't know if this is the best advice, but what comes to mind is just to have some grace with yourself as you're learning how to do family history. I was even a graduate of a family history 4-year degree program, and I came out of that, and I remember my early clients and the work that I did,
Yeah.
and there's some shame
Cringing a
in
little.
yes, yes, yes. 20 years later, I'm like, okay, there were some definite records that I, anyway, that's okay. This genealogy it's a hobby, but it's also a very detail oriented
Yes.
kind of thing. And you can learn about genealogy for decades and decades, which is why some people really like it
Yeah.
because it doesn't get boring. There's always something to learn.
Yes.
So, just have grace with yourself as you explore and do keep in mind that every fact should have a record
Yes.
attached to that fact. There is a lot online that just gets copied and pasted and copied and
Yep.
pasted and typos. And, so just take the time to really look at the facts and say, does that make sense? And try to actually find a record to provide evidence for that fact because it should have come from somewhere.
Yes.
Um, And so, and that's fun too, as you can actually disprove some stuff
Yeah.
in your family tree. You feel like
Yeah.
quite a detective.
Yeah.
And that's kind of neat as well, to say, well, I've got the actual proof of what is
Yeah.
actually true.
Yeah, great advice. I think that, I think that can be the case with anything. It's just you're learning a process that you're not familiar with. So, yeah, just learning everything you can and definitely giving. I think the same thing. I look at some of the items I did early on, and whoo, yeah, we all learn along the way. We make mistakes and grow from it, right?
We do. But, while you are learning, maybe try not to copy and paste a
Yes.
whole lot of facts that you don't know are
Yeah.
true, because
Yeah.
that just continues the problem. But
Yeah, it
oh
does.
well.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for your expertise and passion today. I am very honored that you spent time with me this afternoon. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you. It was fun.
Until next time, friends, embrace the power of your family's untold tales and embark on a journey of discovery. Let the ink flow and the words dance as you weave together the threads of your ancestors' lives. Start writing your family stories today and let their voices echo through the generations to come at story.com. Have a great day. And that brings us to the end of this episode of the Family Treehouse, where we celebrate the power of storytelling and preserving our family legacies. Storied is more than just a platform for sharing stories. Dive into those historical records and newspapers, discovering the hidden gems that bring your ancestors to life. Add branches to your family tree, connecting the dots between generations. Thank you for joining us on this storytelling journey. Your stories matter, and through Storied, they have the power to resonate across time and touch the hearts of generations to come. Keep uncovering your family's history and keep the spirit of storytelling alive with Storied.